Yeah, they're probably working. All right, good evening and welcome to the February 4th, 2019 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Tom Nasuko and I'm Chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Please be advised that this is a no-smoking facility. The fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room where you entered. The gentleman to my right is Dennis Galvin. Mr. Galvin is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Galvin does not vote on the applications. The gentleman to Mr. Galvin's right is Chris Nicola. Mr. Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You will be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, please call the roll of the members.
Chairman Yuko?
Here.
Vice Chairman Lisowski?
Here.
Mr. Ladary?
Here.
Mr. Steiner?
Here.
Mr. Spur?
Here.
Ms. Newell?
Here.
Ms. Willenberger is absent. Mr. Mullen?
Here.
Ms. Schwartzstein?
I think we're expecting her, but
Ms. Hensel?
also I think we're expecting her.
And Ms. Davis.
Here.
You have a quorum. You can
Okay. We generally hear the cases in the order they listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. If you are a member of the interested public, but not a witness in the case, you'll have 2 opportunities to speak. At the end of each witness's testimony, you'll be given the opportunity to ask the witness questions about their testimony. That is not the time to tell us what you think of the application. To ask questions, you'll have to come to the podium to give us your name, address, and then ask your questions. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to step forward, and at that time you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided tonight. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you can complete your case within 30 minutes. Our next case is Morris Habitat for Humanity, 146 Morris Avenue, and Mr. Lisowski chaired the prior hearing in this case, so we're going to change chairs. He's going to continue hearing this case. It's a little bit unusual, but we thought that probably was the best way to handle it.
Good training opportunity for Mr. Lisowski. If you can survive this hearing, you'll be ready for everything else we can throw out.
That's right.
Are you gonna catch us up?
I will take a few minutes just to state where we left off.
You could take a minute or 2.
Okay. My name is Sean Monahan. I'm a lawyer at Skank Price Smith & King. We're attorneys in Florham Park, New Jersey, and we represent Morris Habitat for Humanity, Inc., the applicant in this matter. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Matthew Posada. He's going to introduce some of the witnesses and present some of the testimony.
And while the case is being introduced, Jay Delaney from the law firm of Lindenberry, McCormick, Schuster, Brook & Cooper, on behalf of Alexander Gurich, and also Joel Gigliano at 71 Michigan Avenue, both Summit residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
The application is for subdivision and site plan approval with respect to affordable housing project. There is a overlay zone that was adopted by the City of Summit to provide for affordable housing in this location. The applicant is proposing 2 6-unit buildings for the affordable housing. The subdivision is required because the property is owned by the Italian-American Federation, and Morris Habitat has negotiated an agreement of sale with the Italian-American Federation. One of the terms of that agreement of sale is for the Italian-American Federation to retain the portion of the property that fronts on Morris Avenue. At the time the application was originally filed, it was proposed that approval for a clubhouse, which is located there now, for the reconstruction of a new structure to be used as a clubhouse. Subsequent to the filing of the application, negotiations between Morris Habitat and the Italian-American Club resulted in the Italian-American Club withdrawing their requirement that the lot on Morris Avenue be approved for use as a clubhouse, and has now consented to that lot being just used for a single-family residence, which is what is permitted in the zone at that location now. So, as a result, Morris Habitat revised the plan and submitted to the board to remove all of the improvements that had previously been shown and sought site plan approval for what is proposed Lot 1.02. The plan now is just to have a conforming lot, which it does, which could be developed for a single-family home down the road, but that conforming lot will simply be retained by the Italian-American Club, and it will be up to the Italian-American Club or whoever seeks to develop that lot at some point in the future to come before the board and obtain any approvals that may be necessary in connection with that. So tonight, we plan to present the remaining testimony with regard to the affordable housing project to be constructed on lot proposed 1.01. We presented Fred Stewart, the engineer, who prepared the plan last time. I have just a few points that Liz DeCourcy, the Chief Operating Officer for Morris Habitat for Humanity, will testify to. Then Mr. Posada will present Seth Lieb, the architect who designed the project. Mr. Posada will then present Eric Keller, who is our traffic expert. I will present Chuck McGrody, who is our planning expert, and we hope to be done at that point. We understand that Mr. Delaney is here to present some objections.
Just for clarity, the lot 1.02, it's still subdivided as per the last hearing?
That's
You're
correct.
just removing any structures on that lot, or any, you're not requesting any variances on that lot?
Correct. No variances, no waivers. We're not requesting any site plan approval with respect to that lot at all.
Yeah, you're the chairman. I'm asking. Absolutely. Okay. I got to get authorization.
You need to be approved.
Our goal tonight is to end the hearing by 10:30. So if we're close to finishing everything, we'll keep going, you know? But if it's one of those times when we've only heard 4 of Mr. Delaney's witnesses, or we haven't heard the planner yet, you know, we may have to carry this to another night just so that everybody is being treated fairly. And, you know, let's try to be expeditious in what we're doing. I think there is, I'm going to go a little off script by what I'm going to say next, but it's my responsibility to look out for the board. And I think the board needs this education before we get into the rest of this hearing. A lot of my board members, has anybody been here for more than 3 years? Mr. Yuko and Mr. Lasowski, the only 2. I don't use it in a negative way, but as a matter of experience, and one of the principal things that that you have to understand is this case involves what's called an inherently beneficial use. Affordable housing is considered, you know, very important to the state of New Jersey. So when you have a use that's inherently beneficial, we're supposed to grant it unless we can find some reasons about it, some very big negatives that would offset those positives of this important issue of affordable housing. Now, it's troubling when you sit on a board like this of the lack of control that we have over society. We may have different sides on the issue from a policy standpoint. What we like, what we don't like, I gotta tell you, none of that matters here. We're not a governing body, we're a judicial body. We have to apply the law to the facts. So affordable housing is inherently beneficial. That's it, unless there's some other case. So what we then have to do is we have to apply the Sika balancing test to it. So we acknowledge it meets the positive criteria, and we have to consider the negative criteria. You all know that the negative criteria has two components. It has the negative impact on the surrounding property owners, and you should be listening carefully to how this proposal will negatively affect the neighbors. Are there changes that we can ask or suggest to make this use, which may not be palatable to some of the people that are here, to make it fit better? That's really where your focus should be on. That's the best way that you can help the neighbors and do your service. Now, there are times, we have had a case here once that we turned down, the helicopter case, which eventually helicopters there. But we were never reversed by the court because we did our job properly. And when so you can turn down an inherently beneficial use when there are too many negatives from the use. There's just too many cars coming. There's just too many drainage problems. There's just too great an impact on the zoning. But in this case, the two prongs, one is impact on the neighbors and the other's on the master plan. The governing body went out of its way to make an overlay zone that made this use permitted in this location. So this use, other than the fact that it's more units than what is allowed, is consistent with the underlying zoning. So that part of the prong is almost kind of satisfied for you. Now, to make things more complicated, this isn't a use variance case, this is a density case. So when we decide a density case, how do we do that? We try to determine whether or not the increase in density can be accommodated in this location. All right? So just wanted to lay the ground rules down. We need, the final part of the Sika balancing test is, before you weigh them out, because inherently beneficial uses are so important to society, we have to see if there's some conditions that we can impose that'll make it fit. Make that square peg fit into that round hole. And that's what, again, I'm telling you, that's where I want you to look. Is there some way, something we can do? Can we add trees? Can we add sidewalks somewhere? Can we do this? Can we do that? Those are the things that we should be conditioning. At the end, you balance the positive and the negative as conditioned, and then if the benefit outweighs the detriment, you can approve. If it doesn't, you can deny. Now, would you like to make a comment?
Absolutely. Having participated in the helipad case, where I represented the neighbors and successfully challenged the application of...
Were we on the same side?
No, you were the judge.
Oh, okay.
You were the judge. And I just want to make it clear that this board should bring their common sense to the table. And if it doesn't smell right, or it's too big, or the drainage, as Mr. Galvin said, or there's too much traffic, bring your common sense to the table. Yes, you have the positive and inherent beneficial use. Yes, it's there. But common sense, I think, should be a guiding principle.
Okay.
I just wanted to lay down, I wanted everyone to understand where the board needs to get focused, and I think I did that, so why don't you proceed, and let's get to the things that matter. Oh, Ms. Schwartzstein, you're gonna come up? Are you recused in this case, and I don't know it?
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I think I missed the first, there was one matter that was heard before this one?
Yes.
Correct. And is this the Habitat for Humanity?
Yes,
Then I'm recusing myself, but I just wanted to listen.
no problem. Just wanted to make sure that you were sitting where you belong, that's all.
Thank you, I appreciate
That's
that.
it.
Mr. Galvin, for the record.
Discussion that we had about notifying the city for its, and the Highline,
I forgot, say it again.
we can send out a special notice to a neighbor property that would not have normally received one.
Okay,
Should we advise? I
oh,
don't see them here, but I don't.
okay. We sent a notice out on our own to, who was that we sent it to?
The Highline. As you know, a good portion of this property is surrounded by the old railroad track that is being created by the city into a park. And
they would never have received notice of this, the foundation that is doing those renovations would never have, and I believe I asked the question of you last time whether or not you'd had any contact, and the answer was no. So therefore, it was kind of my suggestion that we notify them, and I believe our staff has at least told them that this is ongoing, because it surrounds a lot of this, and I think that, as I look at some of this, what they're doing and planning right now may have an effect on what this group plans and affects, and they're not talking to each other.
Well, we can't,
And I know you say
I
we can't
think-
deal with that, but I think we need to, we have to.
well, no, you have to give me 1 minute, and you have to think about what I'm saying, because if we go see a judge and they listen to the transcript, it's important that I understand what you're saying, but I want to make sure the judge understands what you're saying, okay? I know why it makes sense from a planning standpoint that these things work in unison, but at the zoning board, we have to take every application on its own merits, and we only have jurisdiction to hear this case. Now, if you think that that has a negative impact on this, you can take that into consideration. But the fact that they don't have to both be here at the same time. And we went the extra step of putting them on notice, because I wanted you to feel that we did everything that we should do, and I don't think there was anything wrong in doing that. So, okay? Do you agree with me now?
Yeah, I agree with that part of it, but
Yeah, no, it's just.
there will be questions asked.
Okay, ask questions, you're supposed to ask questions. And also let the record reflect that Mr. Yuko and Ms. Davis have both taken the time to read the transcript.
All right, thank you very much. At the risk of going off script, Mr. Galvin, I'd like to call Mr.
Excuse me, George.
Doug Wright.
Excuse me, the board member who just recused herself, what was the reason, and should she leave the room?
You're not entitled to know the reason, and there's no reason for her to leave the room, so.
For the record, I respectfully disagree, but that's for the record.
Leave.
Thank you,
And,
Mr. Galvin.
and we go to court, we're gonna fight that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin.
So,
Because my board member has a constitutional right to sit in this case as a citizen and listen to this case.
For the
You're
record,
violating her rights by asking her to leave.
Respectfully, Mr. Galvin disagreed, but that's why we have the record. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see.
I'm going to ask Doug Wright, Director of Construction at Morris Habitat for Humanity, to come up and discuss his, or describe his attendance at a presentation on the railroad park. Mr. Wright, you've been previously sworn, you're still under oath.
Thank you.
Did you attend a presentation with regard to the proposed conversion of the railroad right-of-way into a park?
I did.
Okay, and could you describe your activity for the board?
I did speak to several of the board members from the Highline Committee. It was at a community meeting about the Highline, so I got to hear what the project was all about and what the plans were. I felt this was a very compatible project with what we are doing. I think it is a benefit to members of the community. It will allow them to walk safely to different places in town to get exercise. I think it would be a benefit to our homeowners to have that project adjacent to ours, and I did let the board know that we support the project.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Any questions for Mr. Wright?
All right?
Public?
I have a couple of questions, but I'll let the public go first.
Well, you should go first. Okay? That'll be the procedure. Mr. Delaney will go first, and then the public will go. The people who, except for the two individuals that you're representing.
Mr. Wright, I'm new to the game tonight. Where do you live?
I live in Morris Plains.
The community of Caring.
Yes,
Wait for a question.
And are you familiar with this neighborhood?
I am.
And how many six-unit buildings are in this neighborhood?
Well, we've already built one on Morris Ave.
You didn't answer my question. How many six-unit buildings are in this neighborhood?
He did answer your question. There's one at least.
In this particular neighborhood in the Delta?
What do you describe as the dimensions of the neighborhood,
Mr.
Mr.
Galvin,
Delaney?
point of order.
I'm sorry, I turned away for a second. You guys gotta behave yourselves. What's going on?
I was interrupted with my question. I'm just politely asking. In the Ashwood Court neighborhood, how many six-unit buildings are there?
I have
But
not,
don't answer that question. You gotta ask him questions related to his testimony. What did he say that prompts that question? He's not a planner, he's just,
You familiar
Got
with
it.
the neighborhood?
I have been to the property and I have driven along Ashwood Court and Ashwood Ave.
And there's no six-unit buildings in that neighborhood, is that correct?
I did not specifically examine the neighborhood to
don't
search
twist.
for.
If you don't know,
Thank you.
say, I don't know.
He answered my question. He didn't
Okay.
know the neighborhood.
Sorry.
Mr. Wright, are you familiar with the neighborhood?
As I just said, I have been to the neighborhood on numerous occasions. I have driven the neighborhood and I have walked some of the streets as well.
And did you participate in the design of the project?
I did.
And did your knowledge of the neighborhood come in handy for that?
Yes, it did.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right.
All right, that's it for Mr. Wright, unless somebody else from the public has a question.
I'm Dr. Walter H. Kraft. I was here before. I'm a resident at 2 Ashwood Court. When you talked to the Parkline project, did you talk about getting access between the property that you're proposing and the Parkline project?
They expressed some interest in having access at a number of points. Direct access from our project was not discussed in any detail.
Was there any access in the area that you're familiar with that you did discuss, that they did discuss?
There was a lot of people at the meeting, so our conversation did not go into details. We agreed we would discuss those issues at a future date.
So you don't have any plans for any access between the Habitat site and the Parkline project?
At this time, there is none planned.
Can I
Thank
interrupt
you.
for a second? Can you?
We could. It was a discussion I am more than open to have with the committee.
But it's not part of this application, right?
It is not on the site plan at this time.
No, but one of the things I would say is are you against them having access, or do you want them to have access?
I was just wondering what they had in terms of access.
Because we
Just
can
trying
make
to
that,
find out what the relationship is between the two projects.
because we can make a condition that they consult with, talk to, provide if, at the request of the other party, that access. In other words, when people say we discuss things, we don't get what they discuss. So we want to, we make a commitment, we can put a commitment in the resolution that says that they will provide access to.
Mr. Wright, was Morse Habitat requested to provide access for the committee?
No.
We are not proposing access. It is not part of this application. We are not proposing access from this property to the proposed park.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else for Mr. Wright?
Yes. Hi, my name is Tara Gagliano. I live at 6 Ashwood Court. How many times have you been to the site?
I have not kept count. I would say it's over a dozen times.
Okay, because I saw you today at 5:30 this afternoon. I was just wondering what you were doing there today.
There were some comments, and I was just, like I said, I'm keeping myself familiar with the property and the neighborhood.
Okay, I just wanted to be known that I saw him for about 5 minutes, and then he got in his car and left. So I'm just wondering what he was gathering at that particular moment in time.
I guess I have to object. It's not a question. It's not time to.
That was my question. I asked what.
She got the
what
answer?
were you doing
She's
there?
good.
Okay.
Anyone else for Mr. Wright?
Good evening. My name is Frank Dobashevsky. I'm the owner at 4 Ashwood Court. Just a few questions for you, sir. Yes, I'm sorry. It's D like in David, O-B-I-S-Z-E-W-S-K-I.
Sorry.
So if I understood you correctly, you said that you visited the neighborhood a number of times, and what was the purpose of those visits? What was your objective?
I've had a lot of objectives. One of the things, as I just indicated, I did have a hand in the design of this project, and I'm always very concerned at making our projects fit into the neighborhoods. Some of my meetings were to meet with the Italian American Club. Some of them were to see what the neighborhood is like and what activities were happening there. I also did lead the construction of our other project on Morris Ave, so I've actually been through the neighborhood a number of times over many years.
So is your involvement, was it a technical support? Was for the technical design? Was this to provide some planning input? Or I'm just trying to understand what your role when you said you were involved with the design or the concept. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what it was.
My expertise is in construction, so I will interface with our our architect about the design of the building, the style. I may also work with our engineer in fitting that building on the site and site improvements.
What type of construction are you in?
I have done residential construction and contracting for over 30 years.
So if that was the case, then so if it was basically to come out and you were looking at it from a construction standpoint, why was there the need to visit the property so many times or certain times of the day? It almost seems like it was almost like a planning or support function, not necessarily a construction one.
Don't
Not
know that he
sure.
has to answer that. I don't see the
I'm just trying to figure out what his role is. I mean, if his role as being a technical advisor for construction, that's one thing.
Is that your role?
Like I said, I will work with our architect and our engineers and our other professionals, and as the project goes on, I will be responsible for overseeing the construction.
Okay.
But up to that point, so what would your capacity be as you're working, when you say you're working with the engineers, you're working with the architects, doing what?
It will be reflected in the style of the building. It may be reflected in details. You know, if we're looking for, you know, are we talking, you know,
Does
what's
that
this?
include a constructability review?
Can we build it?
No. Well, yeah, a constructability review, yes. Can you build it? Let's start with something very basic.
Yes.
Okay. Would also then part of that constructability review be whatever obstacles there may be to building the project?
Well, certainly, we would try to avoid as many obstacles as we could.
Of course. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, just a couple of quick questions. My name is
Pardon me,
Joe.
sir, are you represented by Mr. Delaney?
I am not.
Okay, sir.
My name is Joseph Eng. I live at 137 Hillcrest. You mentioned before that you met with the Italian-American Club in the process of designing the Habitat site, is that right?
Yes.
And you've been to the neighborhood several times, is that right?
Yes.
Did you ever meet with any of the people in the neighborhood when you were designing the site?
There were, actually, we've been to the site several times, and as tonight I was seen by one of the neighbors, we have talked to neighbors when we've been in the neighborhood.
Do you remember who you spoke to?
I do not recall names. Not my strong point, remember.
Do you remember how many neighbors you spoke to?
It's been 2 or 3 of them who were on Ashwood Court.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question.
We normally don't do Tuesdays. I'm going to let you go this
Thank
time,
you.
but next time through, get all your questions in one shot.
This afternoon, you met with somebody, okay? You don't know their name?
I did not ask for a name.
Okay.
I said I don't usually quiz the people I meet on the street.
I don't have any questions.
Let's get another witness.
All
Let's
right.
go.
Mr. Corsi?
I don't know about you, I want to see us move along this
Love
case.
to.
Previously sworn or no?
Ms. DeCoursey was previously sworn, but please state your name again for the record.
Liz DeCoursey, DeCoursey.
We covered some of the other questions. So, Ms. DeCoursey, did you see an updated memorandum of February 1, 2019 from Mr. Hippolyte regarding the updated subdivision and site plan?
Yes, I did.
And does Morris Habitat have responses to any of the points made by Mr. Hippolyte?
Yes, there were 2 points that I read. It was paragraph 13 regarding the fence location along the common property line.
And what prompted the preparation of your responses?
That when I had met with some of the neighbors on 2 occasions in early January, and we got some mixed results or comments on how to address that fence. The owners on lot 13 did not want us to disturb their existing fence in the backyard, which would then not allow us to meet up to it with our new fence. The other neighbors were fine with us removing the existing fence along the property line. So there will be likely a double fence behind lot 13.
And if the board has a condition or some comment relating to the fences, will Morris Habitat comply with the board's condition or requirements?
Yes.
And was there another point in Mr. Hippolyte's memorandum that
There
you
was.
want to address?
It was his paragraph number 27 regarding trees along the right-of-way, which would be our new driveway on Ashwood Court. The neighbors at Lot 14 had expressed interest in not having any plantings whatsoever in that area.
And if the board had a condition or a requirement with regard to plantings within the right-of-way, would Morris Habitat comply with that
Yes.
requirement or condition?
Yes, we will.
I have no other questions for Ms. DeCoursey.
Does anyone from the board have a question for this witness?
Yeah, so lot 14 was okay with you, say, working with their fence to join the fence from your property, and lot 13 objected, just on getting this straight?
Correct.
So did the owner from lot 14 express any opinion about the project to you?
Yes. Everyone we met was against the project.
Okay, thank you.
I want to ask a question with respect to lot 1.02?
Yes.
Subdivision lot? What was it that prompted you to remove the structure that you proposed to put there?
It was to simplify the application, but quite honestly, at the last meeting, there seemed to be a lot of confusion about what was happening between the two lots. And when we went back and spoke to the Italian American Club, it all stemmed from our original plan. It was going to be a club. And then after the TRC meeting, we changed it just to a single family, but really never took away the requirements for what was to be built there. And they're likely going to not build it themselves. And if they don't, we didn't want to have restrictions on a piece of property that somebody else may buy and develop.
Was there any consideration into perhaps using that lot to be an entrance to lot 1.01?
Not since this last hearing, but prior to that, we did get a price from the club and presented it to the City of Summit to see if they could provide the funding from the trust fund to purchase it, and they declined, so we declined the offer to purchase the property.
Any other questions from the board? None?
All right, Mr. Delaney?
Mr. Corsi, what's your position at Habitat? I missed that.
I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Director of Property Acquisition.
And where do you live?
Hackettstown, New Jersey.
And picking up on the comment of the chair, the acting chair, am I to understand that you would not be willing to have the entrance onto Morris Avenue?
We won't have that property, so we will not be able to have the entrance.
Well, are you willing to have the existing property the way it stands now with traffic instead of being dumped onto Ashwood, being dumped onto Morris?
Are we willing to?
Yes.
No, we won't have access.
Doesn't the Italian American Club now have access to Morris Avenue?
Yes.
And don't they have parking that they work out with Overlook Hospital?
As far as I know, that's
And
true.
in fact, don't they put 60 cars for Overlook Hospital on that site now?
I don't know the number.
When you met with the neighbors, did you hear any objections about the traffic from this project being dumped onto Ashwood Court?
Yes.
And what was your response?
That there was no other way to exit the site because we do not own or will not own the property on Morris Avenue.
And from what I'm hearing in response to the acting chair's question, it sounds like economics were a driving factor in this plan, isn't that correct?
That was a factor.
I have no further questions.
No further questions.
Walter Kraft again. When the new applications were put in or the plans were updated, was the engineering updated and completed?
Which plans? The one where we removed the improvements from lot 1.02? Yes, that new plan was submitted.
And how about the engineering? Has the engineering been updated and completed?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Because many of the engineering plans were never completed. There weren't any grade plans, there weren't any cross-sections. There was not a proper engineering
I'm not the engineer, I
plan
can't
shown.
answer your question.
But I'm asking if these plans, when the plans were submitted, was the engineering updated?
The only change was the change to the improvements being removed on lot 1.02. No other changes were made to the plans.
Thank you.
One quick question, Mr. Corsi.
I think we have one
I'm
more
sorry.
question here.
Frank Benishensky. I don't know if you remember,
Yes.
we met with the school. I just want to make sure that I understood some of the conversation that we had when we met on site there with all the other residents. I remember that there was a concern about how the recycling was going to be handled, how the trash and all that was going to be handled as well. And if I remember correctly, that's why I'm asking you here, kind of basically said, well, that's, once we're done with the site here is developed, that really then becomes the property owners, and it's a city issue and those types of things. Is that, did I understand that correctly?
Partially. Part of it is we were trying to work with, ahead of time speaking to the city about how that would be addressed, knowing the concerns of the neighbors. I was unable, after many tries, to get any response from the people that handle the recycling. And we did speak to Krista Anderson's office about the garbage pickup, and she said it would be typical to any other project where it'd be removed from the backyard.
Okay. In a general sense, what, if the site is developed, if it is built, where does the involvement with Habitat for Humanity end?
Well, it doesn't end really ever because we have an ex officio, our CEO is an ex officio on the condominium board, and we are always there as a support to the homeowners if and when needed.
Okay. When I was looking over the plans, I remember that there was one note in particular that stood out, had to do with something site level. And basically what it said was something, it was actually found, it's the last one on the grading plan, or the drainage plan, or something like that. And it basically says that if there is a problem with the letting of paraphrasing right now, that the applicant agrees to make certain changes. So what type of involvement would that be, for how long?
I'm not sure what your question is. When would the changes be made?
Well, basically, what I was asking is that if in fact there is a note on those plans and it says that if there are problems with the site lighting, that the applicant agrees to make the change, you are the applicant. So I'm
Right.
asking at what period of time would the involvement, would you basically be relieved of that responsibility?
Hold on a second. Where's the engineer?
We didn't bring it.
Okay, all right.
But I'll object to the question. I think it's totally speculative. It depends on what the problem is and whether it's something Habitat can do about it.
Well, it says that basically it's kind of unusual where, basically once a site plan is approved, the applicant agrees to basically stand around, and if there's any problems, they're going to address it. I'm asking what period of time is that going to be?
How long do you hold the mortgages?
30 years, but I think the question may be relating to the condo association more, because if that condo association would be the owner of the property, and if there's any issues, I guess any
Guys,
resident would go directly.
Let's slow down. We're guessing.
Okay.
No offense.
Well, no, it says the applicant.
No, but you were talking about, are you concerned with site lighting?
Yes.
Okay, so why wouldn't the what do you think, Chris? When would we make can we make a determination in the field that the site lighting is adequate?
Well, I mean, the plans show that the site lighting is adequate and it doesn't spill onto the other properties.
So we don't need to have that note on this plan then?
I don't even see the note on the plan, so I'm not really sure what we're talking about. There's no notes on the lighting plan.
Okay.
It's on the grading plan?
That's it. When the last notes that we.
But we've already found that it's adequate based on what the diametrics are for the lighting, so I think I said
Okay,
the word right.
if you don't mind me reading what the note says. So the notes, number 19 on page 5 of 10. See the architectural plans for outdoor light fixtures. The proposed lighting is in compliance with the city's ordinance. If the lighting becomes an issue during or after construction, the applicant agrees to install shielding to prevent light spillage. Now, I mean, that could be a condition. I don't know how you want to word it, but it's already in there as a
When we
note.
hit a break, I'll take a look at it.
Okay.
I'll put it in as a condition.
All right.
Linda Gagliano, 71 Michigan Avenue.
Not your client?
Not my client.
It's a gray area. Go ahead. It's a gray area. Cheating.
You remember me?
Yes, I did.
We met in January. And with my daughter. And we never said we were opposed to the project. What we're opposed to is the design. I have a drainage problem that it cost me $30,000 to fix from the Italian American Club. We asked you and the engineer to move the dry wells to the other side of the property. I didn't get an answer about that.
I'm not sure what the question is whether or not.
Moving the dry wells away from the corner of my property.
No change has been made to the plan.
All right, time out.
It's the first time I'm hearing of it. So the dry wells are located on the Ashwood Court side of the property, and that's where they have been located since the initial plans. Nothing has changed with this latest revision.
Is that the most logical location for them, or?
They could be, quite honestly, if they were to find out the soils in those locations were not good for perking the water, then they would have to locate them someplace else or make some other compensation, or other plans. But they could be moved elsewhere on the site, but it's very tight. And they have to be a certain distance from the buildings, because there is basements in the buildings. It would be tight on the northernmost unit, Building A. It's probably doable on Building B. But unfortunately, without having their engineer here, it's, that would really be his decision.
Okay.
Are those dry wells currently there?
No, there's nothing
There's
there.
no drainage.
Are they, do you, in your opinion, think that this will prevent or improve the situation of those folks off the property?
I don't know what the,
Let me help you.
okay.
What we're asking, and if I'm not getting it right, correct me. Whenever the stormwater runoff, the general rule is that post-stormwater runoff cannot exceed pre-development runoff. Or the reason why you have dry wells here is because you're trying to reduce the stormwater runoff on the adjacent properties. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so you're doing great, Chris, but I need help, okay? Is the stormwater runoff going to be improved based on the way the plan is right now, or is it meeting the minimum?
It's meeting I have to look at the calculations, but it's meeting what's required to collect all the stormwater from the buildings. It has lawn inlets as well to capture some of the runoff from the lawn areas. And there is an overflow from each one of them to the city storm system. So it's got a lot of checks and balances in there.
Could it be said that it will improve drainage in the neighborhood and make it better for Mrs. Gagliano?
I think there's a lot of, this is adding impervious surfaces that they're capturing that from the buildings. I don't know what was there before. I mean, as far as what the calculations of what the increase in impervious coverage, they're capturing all of that, which is what's required by law.
Did that answer your question?
It raised more.
Okay.
Gavin, in the interest of transparency, one of our witnesses will be testifying to the major water problems in the neighborhood.
All right. I'm sure we're going to find that testimony very draining.
Oh, I like that.
The former person that was up here before testifying, who visited my property, was looking at my wall. You were the one that brought up the day that we met that my wall is in disrepair. And it is, I have pictures of what the Italian American Club created. They used to push the snow against the fence that was embedded in the concrete wall. Therefore, the wall is pushed out from the pressure of all the snow. I asked, being that they're going to have the dry wells, you're going to put piping to the storm sewers, correct? Along the wall.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know.
Yes. Well,
I don't
you
know
have
is
to
the-
have pipes to go from the dry wells.
No, she can't answer. She's not the right witness. The other witness has already been here, testified, and is gone.
And interrogated by the public.
Yeah.
But she
so-
was there and I spoke to her about this
Right,
and
but
the
she's not an
engineer.
she is not an engineer.
Okay, so this subject is closed now.
Pretty much, yeah. We're trying to help you with questions, and I've already tried to use the
Because
board
this
engineer.
is very upsetting. I mean, my home for the past 43 years, it cost us $30,000 to put drains in to collect the water from there. When it rains, the sump pump runs constantly, although I have drains all over my yards. So this is really upsetting to me.
Their obligations to make sure that their construction doesn't increase the problem on the adjacent properties.
But I shouldn't have any problem with their runoff, never mind increasing it. There shouldn't be any runoff. And over the years, there has been.
Do our normal 2-year.
Exactly.
Let's leave that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
All right. Next witness.
Okay, Mr. Posada will take you through the architect and traffic plan.
Let's call up my next witness, Seth Lieb.
Now, How many architects have you cross-examined?
Today?
Good answer. I'm wondering why you're the expert that cross-examines. You're the attorney that cross-examines. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Kindly state your full name for the record. Spell your last name.
Seth A. Lieb, L-E-E-B.
All right.
Seth A. Lieb, Architect, AIA. The office is located at 1719 Route 10 East, Parsippany, New Jersey, Suite 100.
Boy, you seem very familiar to me, but can you give me 3 tenants that you've appeared before recently? Please don't include Summit.
Which I have appeared before.
I bet you have. Go ahead.
I've appeared before,
You can put your right hand down.
okay. I've appeared before Mountain Lakes, Westfield, Boonton Township, one more, Belmont.
That's
Okay.
great, thank you.
All right. Do we accept
We
his
accept the
credentials, Mr.
credentials.
Chairman?
Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't hear whether he was licensed in the state of New Jersey.
Are you licensed in the state of New Jersey?
Oh, keep your hand down.
Sorry.
I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey, and I've owned my own business for 21 years.
Okay.
Thank
Is that good enough, Mr. Delane? Would you like to voir dire him?
No.
Okay. I'm sure you'll be more than satisfied. Oh, if we do that. Go ahead, guys, let's go.
Thank you. Have you had an opportunity to visit the site?
Yes, I have.
Have you prepared these plans you have here before the board in consistency with the master plan and also the relative zoning ordinances?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Can you please tell the board what you are proposing today?
Sorry, I'm tall. Proposing 2 6-unit buildings that are going to be on face Ashwood Court. It's going to have parking for the 2 6-unit buildings. They're going to consist of, each building is going to consist of a combination of 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. Building, as they're labeled on the property, there's a Building A and a Building B. Building A, when you come in the property, is on the right. Building B is on the left. Building A will have 2 3-bedroom units and 4 2-bedroom units. It is a 2-story building with a basement. The attic is not habitable. The second building, Building B, will have 4 3-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units to make a total of 6 units in each building. The units range in size from about 723 square feet to 1,280 square feet. Each unit, there are no common hallways or stairwells. Each unit has a separate entrance accessible, 3 units upstairs, 3 units downstairs. All of the units on the first floor in both of the buildings are handicap accessible as mandated, or ADA accessible / adaptable. The buildings, having visited the neighborhood and having worked in Summit previously, very familiar with the character and neighborhood and the character of architectural houses and multifamily dwellings in the area. I've been working with Habitat for over 10 years, working on different Habitat projects, and one of the most important things on any project, whether it's for Habitat or for a single-family residence or multifamily, is to go visit the site, look at the character, and draw from the character so that the project and the housing can fit in the neighborhood. As you look at the architectural drawings, which I can show you in a minute, we've picked characteristics that are sympathetic and compatible with the other houses and building types in the neighborhood, with gable roofs, fiberglass shingles, siding. Also, we've mixed up a combination of the materials, not only to include siding, but also to include a shingle style or scallop style siding. There will also be many, a typical project for Habitat for Humanity.
Do you have a drawing?
Yes, let me just.
Is it on the board?
No.
Is that the way you normally do it?
Normally this is a little closer.
Okay.
It's not a movable mic.
Right.
Okay, if I hold it up for the board? This way I can talk into the mic?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to, these buildings, this particular drawing, A101, is in your packet.
Your attorney's going to help you.
Yeah. Okay. Just I'm just pointing out, this drawing has not changed from in your packet. It's
All right, so it
A101.
doesn't need an exhibit. Go ahead.
I've made a second drawing, which is identical to it. It's also labeled A101, but it's been colorized. This is not in your packet.
So that'll have to be marked as an exhibit. You're okay. Go off, go off.
Continue.
No talking now. You're off the record. Do you have, is one of those boards a picture of the, like a nice drawing of what they're gonna look like? A nice rendering?
Yes, I do.
Why don't you put that up on that board there? Just let it sit there. You got help, but it was crooked.
I didn't have my level with it.
That's the Laurel and Hardy School of Assistance.
Mr. Galvin, can you pass that around? Yeah.
You can't see that.
Can you pass it around first?
Yeah, let's do that.
It's good to me.
Do we need it later?
Nah, show the board. We'll label in a second. That'll be, what's the next exhibit? A2. A2. Don't worry about it. We'll get it. We'll get it. It's A2.
Is it labeled? May I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So this colorized version, the reason is to just help the board visualize what the different units are. Just want to take you through. This is Building A, as I mentioned, or I didn't previously mention. And you can see, this is the first floor here on the left, and this is the second floor on the right. The first floor has entrances, one to this unit here, one to this unit in the center, and one to this unit right here. They're all accessible, you can see, by sidewalk, and they're all handicap accessible. The 3 units that are upstairs, one entrance is here, one entrance is here, and another entrance is here. This one leads to this unit up here, a 2-bedroom. It's a 2-bedroom over a 2-bedroom. In the center here, it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom over a 3-bedroom. This unit here, it's a 2-bedroom over a 2-bedroom. As you can see, there's no common entrance. In addition, there's also 2 other stairs. One stair that's internally, that goes down to the basement, and as a second means of egress from the basement, there's an exterior stair that comes up on the outside. The basement in each of the buildings is purely for mechanical and storage. The entire building, as previously noted, and if it wasn't, I'm noting it now, is entirely sprinklered. So both buildings, Building A and Building B, have sprinklers throughout with a sprinkler room.
Why don't you share with the public?
Building B, this plan, A104, is in your packet. Colorized version of it, of Building B, A104.
So we're going to go off the record. We're going to mark that, and we're going to get the extra label for the other
Okay.
picture that's passing.
And I'll talk about that as well.
The attorney has to be standing in front of us. His intimidation factor is behind. He should be either in his seat and then make him talk at the podium.
Well, he wants to be able to see the exhibits.
So can the public.
Jay, you do me a favor, could you go back and...
Okay, so when I can't see, should I have them turn around?
You do what you gotta do, Jay,
Okay.
all right?
Okay, this has now been labeled A3. Just want to take you to through this building and how it differs from the other building. Basically, they're similar, except as I mentioned earlier in my testimony, that this building has 2 3-bedroom units. So what we've done is actually extended this one, this unit on the first floor, this unit on the second floor. It stacks over it, so that here's 2 3-bedroom units, 2 3-bedroom units directly over it, 2-bedroom unit, 2-bedroom unit. First floor, entrance here in the same place. All the entrances are identical for Building A and Building B. The only difference is the third bedroom here and just a reconfiguration of the space. Both of them also have entrance down into the basement and up from the basement. This is only fire exit purposes only. You cannot enter into the basement here. It's purely for emergency egress from the basement as required by the building codes. Both, as I mentioned earlier, identical basements, except this one's slightly larger. As the rendering is going around, you have both of these drawings in your packet. This is A102 and A105. A102 represents the building elevations, and A105, so A102 is for building A, A105 is for building B. So you all saw the rendering. Came around. This is a perspective view as standing in the parking lot looking at Building A, although Building B is similar except for this being a little bit longer right here. Okay, you can see here's one entrance to the basement, one entrance to a two-bedroom unit. This is for the upstairs unit. I'm sorry. Can everybody see? Stand back. The other entrances, and then the last entrance there. Also, all of these units, as evidenced from the elevation, all of them have little porches for them, so that they have a little outdoor area that's attached to their space. As you can see also in this, we will be using earth tone colors. It will be a combination of beiges and browns and yellows. It'll be a brown fiberglass composite roofing, like a gaff timberline shingle roof. Doors, porches, and also very sustainable materials that have excellent life cycle costs. In terms
Let
of,
me interrupt you. Let me ask you a question. What's the siding made of? Can you give us a
yes, it's a vinyl siding.
vinyl siding?
Yes, and it's going to have AZAC or some similar composite type of trim. As you can see, there's corner boards, also some pent roofs, gables. These are all features that you would find in the neighborhood on the houses. Stacked gables. It has some hip roofs. There's some gable ends, another stacked gable here, stacked porches, covered entrances with roofs, and a wood or simulated wood doors.
Why did you choose vinyl over, say, fiber cement?
I've worked with both materials for a long period of time. I've worked with natural materials, and for the terms of life cycle costs, with hardy plank or other cementitious type siding, oftentimes the color fades or has to be redone in a 2 to 5 year period. It doesn't actually go the 10 to 15 period as guaranteed by the company. And I've seen it many times, and more people are opting for a more lasting color. There's also different options that they can do that would be more suited for them for using the vinyl in terms of how it's constructed. Did that answer your question?
Mostly.
What is the orientation, I mean, where's the Ashwood Court entrance in relation to what I'm looking at
Okay.
there?
So Ashwood Court is over here. Sorry. I'll see.
And I'm trying to physically put myself back on the
Okay.
spot. So where is Morris Avenue then in relation to?
Morris Avenue, okay. So if you look at the site plan, the parking has a curve to it. So at the end of the parking here, sorry, I'll try and do it over here. At the end of the parking here, this is where Morris Avenue is, over here.
Thank you.
Is this the only rendering that you have? Do you have anything that would show us what the signage would look like upon entrance?
No, I do not.
Thanks.
So, yes, this is the only rendering I have, and no, I do not have any signage
Do you have any
details.
other, so is that the only design you came up with?
Is this the only design I came up with?
Yeah.
No.
And that's the one they chose?
It takes a lot. Habitat can tell you this, and I can tell you from the amount of hours I spend on working on their projects. This takes a lot of effort and a lot of different designs. We worked on many different designs. We worked on straight buildings. We worked on one singular building. We worked on two buildings. We worked on L-shaped buildings, and all different combinations of how it could best sit on the property and work with parking and work with the site and work with the neighborhood and work with the properties and neighboring things. This was not an easy project by any stretch of the imagination. So, you know, and working so that it works with the topography, so that we have positive drainage, everything. There's a lot of complicated aspects to this particular project. So, no, it is not the only design I came up with.
I don't know, I guess I'm from East Summit. I grew up there. So I guess I'm just concerned, there's, something just doesn't sit right. It just doesn't seem as
Okay, so let me tell you why I came up with the L shape. And as you heard testimony earlier from Doug Wright, who's head of construction, also our engineer who previously testified, Fred Stewart. There's a team that works. Also very involved. It's not only those three people that I mentioned, but also our CFO, Liz DeCourcy, and also our executive director, Blair. We work together to kind of figure this out and see what makes sense and how it works. So the L shape, the reason why we finally chose the L shape is because it reduces the mass and the scale. It works better so that at any one point, you're not seeing how large it is. If it were just one big building, it's hard to differentiate, and to have the 6 units not only differentiate, but also so it fits in with the neighborhood. By having the L shape, and the way it's situated on the property, it gives it more of a 3D perspective. So when you enter the property, you're not looking at the whole thing at once, but you're seeing almost like a view of it. So you're seeing an end or you're seeing a corner, so it doesn't look as big. By seeing an end or a corner of an L shape, it reduces the scale. Also, by doing an L shape, we were allowed to do, or not allowed, but I was able to do some more pushes and pulls with the actual building so that I could have insets for entrances so that you don't see all the entrances. So, for example, this covered entrance in the corner, it's recessed so you don't see all of the 6 doors at once, so it reduces also the feeling and character of it.
Why did you go with separate entrances as opposed to one single entrance in each building?
Okay, so because they are condos, and I think someone else can talk about this, but I'd be happy to. Because they are condos, once you start to have shared components in a condominium complex, it's like, well, who's taking care of the stairwell? Oh, it's him. Oh, it's her. Which unit's taking care of it? And it becomes a maintenance issue. This way, by having it as all as individual entrances, that each unit, each condo is responsible for their entrance, their canopy. That's deeded to them, so they have to take care of it, so that when they have a condo association meeting, they can say, your unit needs a little paint or something, or needs a little cleanup or something, whatever it may be. So this helps to reduce, A, managerial problems, and B, gives more, each of these owners actually owns it. It gives them more a sense of ownership when they have their own entrance, just like a single-family house would. A condo has its own entrance.
Is that typical of Habitat projects?
That's typical of every Habitat project I've ever done with them. And I've done a lot.
These are prefabs, correct?
This
As earlier testified. So doesn't
I
that
haven't testified about
restrict
that.
Don't-
What's the question?
You asked the question, but don't interrupt him. He started to respond.
Sorry, what's the question?
Try again, Joe. Joe, repeat the question.
These are prefabs, as was previously testified to. How does that affect what it is that you're trying to do there? And a second part of the question is that the scale as to the height of the High Line?
Okay, let me answer the...
Stuff you have in the back.
Should always ask just one question at a time. They never get there.
Told her got to have both of them together? No.
Okay, I'll try and remember back to the second question. So let me go with the first.
Are these prefab?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that, thank you.
All right, let's do that one first.
So this, as stated previously, this is going to be through the use of modular construction. So what does that mean? What it means is we're going to actually use a system for the foundation. It's called a superior wall system. That's modular in its sense. It's actually going to come in parts. It's going to be lifted into place and assembled like a jigsaw puzzle in a day so that the foundation will go in. The idea behind this is to speed up the construction so as to minimize disturbance anywhere in the neighborhood. So in doing that, I've visited a modular factory specific for this particular project and had many, many discussions with them of how the construction is going to work, the approach, the different design, what the constraints are, and how it can work. So the modular is going to be, let me show it better. I'm going to take building. I'll take Exhibit A1, okay? There's a number of different ways that we can do with this, and we've talked with the modular companies as to how to do this. But in essence, we're going to do this in segments. They're going to come like this on a truck, and whether it's 3 trucks or 5 trucks or 6 trucks, and then per floor, they're going to come and be assembled on top of one another, and it's a modular construction. Again, it'll speed up the construction process.
It's cheaper to do modular.
Actually, it's about the same.
Is it about the same?
It's about the same. When we did a cost analysis, the advantage is speed, and it's also with how the site is occupied. In terms of it's a much faster pace to get it done, to get into the site, get out of the site. There's the.
If I can digress for a minute.
Sure.
Ed didn't get his second answer, by the way.
Who didn't get the
I mean, Joe.
It's all right, we'll get it later.
Go ahead.
Give me a chance, Joe.
Go ahead.
The attics.
Yes.
Where would the access be for the attic, and what will be the allowable
Okay.
of the attic in these units? That's one of 2 questions I have. Will it be drop stairs, scuttle?
It was good. That was the
So this drawing is not in your packet. Okay.
This is A4?
Yes, but we're going to stop. No talking. I never shut up, so it doesn't matter.
Just going to suggest something so she sees.
Yeah, it's just you can't, when we go off the record, she can't type, so it's like, can't be something that's on the record, that's all.
Okay. So this drawing was produced back in October. It was for Krista Anderson, the zoning officer. She had requested that I do and I'm going to get to your answer. I just want to go through the drawing a little bit to explain why I'm showing it. Okay? It was produced to show that the 3rd floor or the attic does not count towards FAR. So we had to do a calculation that that area greater than 5 feet is, that area less than 5 feet, no, greater than 5 feet does not exceed, I believe, 60%. I believe that's what the zoning ordinance is. But it's a number, it's a calculation that, I might have it backwards. But we did it and this conforms, okay? And the reason why I show this is this is a floor plan of the attic. And this is just a section so that you could see what the section of the attic looks like. It's trusses, okay? As it is right now, we would have just an attic scuttle from the attic, or from a unit into the attic. It is not to be habitable in any means. It's all trusses. It's not going to have any mechanical units up there. One thing that this drawing does not show, but will be in the construction drawings, approximately right here, there's going to be a firewall, okay? That firewall is going to extend up from this wall. It'll separate the attic into fire zones as per building codes, and also just for the health, safety, welfare of the people.
Scuttle access.
Scuttle access.
Probably 5 feet or less of
There's more than 5 feet of height in the attic, but that area, it doesn't count towards the FAR, and it's non-walkable attic. It's purely in case, to come up in case a leak.
We don't know the exact height though, 5.5, 6 feet. I don't think it could be 7.
It's 7 feet for this portion here.
7 feet
Yes, yes.
dormer. I'm talking.
No,
right.
7 feet or greater in the main part of the roof.
But again, for purposes of the zoning officer, she's deemed it not habitable.
She's deemed it non-habitable, and it complies under the zoning ordinances, and, yes.
Can we circle back to Mr. Steiner's question with respect to, what I think you're asking is if the High Line's behind it, but I think I might be able to answer that, and that it's not, because it's facing the other building.
Is
Am I
the,
correct?
is the rendering to scale as relating to the High Line?
Well, unfortunately, this rendering isn't facing the High Line, so I can't testify whether it,
Well, the answer is,
it's,
the answer is no. The answer is no.
It's that simple.
no.
Can I ask a question with respect to the colors of the exterior? Is that a palette that is set in stone? In other words, is this what this is the proposed look, the proposed color, that's what we're going to get?
It's not set in stone. This is a typical palette that we had discussed for this particular property, but it's not set in stone.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just jump in real quick? Question number 2. It doesn't appear from your rendering there, I can't see behind, but basement access, only from the interior, or will there be exterior basement access to these units?
So as I mentioned previously in my testimony, which I will review,
And pardon me if I missed it.
that's okay. Ask as many questions. So there are 2 means of egress. One means to get into the space, okay? It's an internal, and I can best, it's here, but I'm going to show you on an elevation.
So it is internal, there's no exterior.
It's internal, but it's a door to the exterior. So in other words, the only way to get into the basement is from an exterior door down an internal stair, okay? And then there's a second
So a walk-up, so to speak.
walk down.
Well, and you can walk up out of it, can't you?
You can walk up out of it. And as I mentioned previously, both buildings will have a second means of egress to the rear of the building.
The height for the basement, 7 feet, 6 feet, crawl space type basement?
No, it's a 8-foot-high plus or minus basement. I believe it's 8 feet. Will house all the mechanical, 2/3 of the mechanical equipment. The way it's set up is that there'll be 7 areas in the basement. One area is dedicated for a sprinkler system in what we call house, okay? And then there'll be 6 other areas. The 6 other areas will have 3 of them for the 3 units on the first floor. We'll have heating and mechanical units, hot water and mechanical units. On the second floor units, it will only have the hot water units, and the actual mechanical units will be built into the second floor units.
So it sounds like it's safe to say there'll be minimal space for any livability, any potential livability.
There will be no windows in the basement, and it is not going to be for livability. There will be storage for each of the units.
So basically, large enough for the mechanical systems and storage.
Yes. You're welcome.
Board members, anybody else?
Construction, the trucks will go through the Morris Avenue or Ashwood?
So the team, as well as the vendor, we've talked about how this is going to work in terms of constructability, and I can talk to it. We can also have the director of construction come up, but I think I can answer your question for you, okay? So we're going to use the access off of Morris to the best that we can during construction. Some of the access will be from Ashwood Court because of turnability for the different trailers in order to unload the modules. The trailers will not be stored on, they will not be staged. They're going to be staged off site. We have not determined where, some possible parking lot not too far away. So the trucks are going to come, and then they're going to be like an on-demand approach. One will come in, offload, one will be waiting, and it'll be a series. But some of it will be through Ashwood Court, and some of it will be through, to the best that we can, we're going to try and use the Summit Avenue, but some of it will definitely come off of Ashwood Court. And I believe, although it's not 100%, depending on the trailer lengths, we haven't decided exactly, it depends on if we get approved, we haven't decided on exactly the length of the trailers. Some of the trailers may be short, some of them may be double loaded, but we have looked into the turnability and everything, and I believe most of the trailers will come through Ashwood. Some might come through Summit, but they won't be parked in Ashwood. They will go right into the site.
Just clarify that, because you're using Summit Avenue, which is, it's Morris Avenue.
Sorry, I apologize.
So I just want to clarify.
I apologize, I meant Morris Avenue.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Will there be cranes on site?
Yes, there will be a crane. There will be a crane for 3 different aspects, okay? One, there will be a crane for the foundation system, okay? They come on a flatbed, and if you can imagine, they're like precast concrete foundation walls. They come in, they get immediately lifted into place. And usually the setting, we just did one of these recently on another habitat project where there were 2 buildings involved. And one of the buildings was done in a day, the other one was done a different day. Okay, and I imagine this is going to be a similar approach. The modulars are the second component. They will come on flatbeds, and they will need a crane. Then the third component to this is the roof trusses. Now the roof trusses, some of them may be integrated with the modules, some of them may not. So it'll either be the same crane for the modules, or it will be a different crane at a different time. But the idea is to make this, to put up the units as quickly as possible so we can, and they will come from the factory with roofing on them. So that they'll be enclosed.
How many days will a crane be on site, do you think?
Excuse me?
How many days will you have a crane on site?
I don't know. Usually a crane will come, so I'm going to say 3 days per no. Let me just think about this. Give me a second.
Take your time.
8 days, sorry. I didn't see my cue. I apologize.
8 days all told for the whole project?
8 days all total.
And from our perspective, that's beyond the scope of our responsibility because that's covered by the building department, police department, other agencies will handle that. They'll handle when the roads have to get closed off.
Okay, so is it fair to ask when they're doing the construction, where the materials, will the trucks be pulled in on the day that those units are to go up, or will they lay overnight or for a week on this lot that you say you're gonna find? Where would that
So
be? You don't know yet.
Don't know, we're working on that. So the Habitat's team, it's really, really efficient. I've worked with them, like I said, 10 years. They have a timeline, and it works like clockwork. Unless, of course, there's muddy days, or it's raining, or, there's inhibitors, we'll call it. But the idea is that a certain number of trucks are going to come from the factory. The factory is in Pennsylvania, makes the trek, comes, and then goes onto the site and it's gone.
Okay.
So if the day of the delivery,
The day of the delivery, it's put up. There's no laying on a lot overnight or for a week before.
it wouldn't be a week. It may be a day. Maybe a day or two, only because of weather conditions.
Depending on whether it could be.
Right. But I think in order for it to be, from what we've learned and studied, in order for it to work the best, the trucks would come in early or stay at the lot, and then in the morning, they'd come one in at a time.
I got the solution. Again, I think this is, we need this information. We want to feel comfortable that you're putting the least amount of burden as you can on Ashwood. Whatever. I can only do what we can do. But the staging plan is to be developed in consultation with the board's engineer and the city police department, and will be agreed upon prior to any resolution of approval. So sometime between, you know, if you got an approval at some point, then would be another 30 days before you got memorialized, and then in that meantime, you could develop the staging plan with the city professionals. Well, I don't think, you don't need to really decide that.
Well, I don't know, so the...
Guys, you don't really need to decide that tonight, because I don't think we're going to finish this case tonight. And we'll have time to think about it. Maybe you'll even have a better answer between now and the next meeting. But I don't want to, you're burning your clock on staging, and I just think that's
Just trying
a
to answer the
mistake.
questions.
So.
Are there any other questions from the board of this witness?
Seth, real quick, can you tell the board about the light fixtures and whether or not they'll be glare minimizing?
Yeah, so they will definitely be glare minimized. All the fixtures that are going to be on the building are going to be decorative, single-family, residential, carriage house, or carriage-like light fixtures.
Are they going to be downlit?
They're most likely will not be downlight because they're more decorative. So it's more, we're talking about a light fixture that would be on the side of a single-family residence door. So it's to illuminate the sidewalk in front of you. If it were purely downlight, they might not be able to see the lock.
And you're satisfied, Mr. Dow?
Yeah, the isometrics they showed for the lighting addressed mostly the parking lot.
Okay.
But they did include the buildings, and everything is
So
compliant with the
there's
city
no
ordinance.
light that's going to be going into anybody's
No.
view. All right, let's move on. You guys done?
Yeah, just one more question. Does the fencing and landscaping appropriately screen the proposed project from the adjacent properties?
Yes, it does.
No further questions to this witness.
Right, Mr. Lane?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good, thanks. I didn't even hear where you live, by the way. Where do you live?
Where my office is located?
No, where do you live, reside?
I live in South Orange, New Jersey.
Now, you testified...
You're going to give him a ride home?
No, I go west.
Okay.
Maybe the other one I can go give her a part ride to Hackettstown. You said that the project was sympathetic and compatible with other houses in the neighborhood. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how many houses are in the neighborhood?
Depends on how you define neighborhood.
Good point. On Ashwood Court, how many houses are on Ashwood Court?
There are several houses on each side.
Is that 2 or 4 or 3?
The way I count, 5 to 6.
And how many times did you visit the site?
Close to half a dozen times.
And are there any other L-shaped houses in the neighborhood?
Yes,
How many?
but not on Ashwood Court per se.
That's my cookie. So there's no L
But
with...
when I consider a neighborhood, I consider not just the immediate street, but on Morris Avenue, also behind in the greater neighborhood, because that's the character of the neighborhood. It's not just one street.
You're telling me the houses on Morris Avenue are part of the Ashwood Court neighborhood?
They're part of the neighborhood where these two residential buildings are going, yes.
Now, you said this is not an easy project. What did you mean by that?
I think I answered that already.
I didn't hear the answer.
The answer was that it was in response to a question from Mrs. Newell, and she asked, was it the only design that I had done for this? I had said no.
And you said there were complicated aspects to this project. What did you mean by that?
Well, like with every project, there are different components. There's the neighborhood, there is the topography, there is the surrounding area, the transportation, the all sorts of different aspects to it.
Now, when you were there, did you see any standing water in the neighborhood?
No, I did not.
Did you see any standing snow in the neighborhood?
I wasn't there when I saw standing snow.
And when you were there, did you see any leaning walls?
I observed different fences and foundation walls. That is correct.
When you were there, did you see any kids in the street?
When I was there, I did not see any kids in the street.
And this project, to your knowledge as the architect, how many cars is it going to generate?
Objection, that's for another witness.
I have no problem if you're going to have another witness testify. I have no problem with that. Okay, thank you. So we'll reserve on that. Now, in response to the chair's question, I think it was, what color are you ultimately going to decide to do? You know.
As I mentioned earlier in my testimony, the design was we typically, for habitat projects, do more earth tones. And so, although this was one of the color palettes that was suggested, this is a color palette that I felt works in the neighborhood, in Greater Summit and in the particular area. But as was previously mentioned, we are not set in stone to this, so that if it's a reasonable combination of colors, we're not going to do something that's very polar opposite. It needs to go together, the colors, and work together for a relationship so that it doesn't stick out in the neighborhood, but more fits in.
I think you testified these are going to be condo buildings?
Condo residences.
And will there be one association or two associations?
It's one association for the two buildings.
And can you give us an estimate on what the maintenance cost for the buildings per month will be?
No, I cannot.
And will they have a maintenance schedule in place before the people move in?
That is not under my direction.
Now, maybe this is another witness, I don't know, but is there going to be a ramp into this?
So the way this was designed was that it's going to be all accessible from grade. There is not going to be as a ramp per se, but the grade, if you look carefully at the grading plan, all of the entrances will slope up to the doors. So the grade will slope up. It's not going to be a physical ramp, but it meets the guidelines for accessibility so that it can go with the grade.
Now picking up on Mr. Yuko's question, I'm totally disoriented. This parking, is this in the back or the front here?
Objection, we'll save the parking for the traffic engineer, unless you want to opine.
I just want to answer that for you. You're looking at the front of this, of Building A. So the parking is situated between Building A and Building B. So you can exit the car and go into the building or go into Building B, Building A.
So Ashwood Court would be out here?
For the benefit of everybody, Ashwood Court would be over here.
Benefit of everyone or just the board?
The benefit of everybody, it would be over here.
So where Ashwood Court is over to my right here?
That is correct.
And you would come in and you would park here and then there'd be another building here?
Okay. If you look at the site plan, you can see that there's parking on both sides of, as you come into the property, there'll be parking on the left and parking on the right.
And the ramp coming in will be to the right of your picture here on A2, right?
What ramp?
The driveway ramp.
The driveway entrance?
Yes.
Will come from Ashwood on the right of my rendering.
And how, is it just one driveway in and out of Ashwood?
It's a one driveway in and out.
Now, just so I understand, picking up on the board's question, you said the crane was going to be there for 8 days?
Yes.
Suppose there's bad weather, how long will the crane be there?
So it might not be 8 consecutive days.
Oh, you bring it in, you bring it out?
It may be, it may not, depending on the weather.
So you're not even sure how many days the crane?
No, it's definitely going to be 8 days.
And the trailers you talked about?
Yes.
How many days will they be there?
We don't know yet.
Now, if you were building a two-family house in the neighborhood, you wouldn't need a crane, would you?
If we were doing modular, yes.
If you were doing a two-family house, would you need trailers coming in?
Yes, if we were doing modular.
Would it, in terms of a magnitude of a two-family house versus a six-unit, two buildings with 6 units, what are we talking about in terms of?
Probably 4 to 6 crane days. So this is 8 crane days.
And what kind of noise are we talking about when we're doing this construction with cranes?
I'm not qualified to answer that.
Are you prepared to concede there would be noise?
I am prepared to concede that there would be noise on any construction site. This would be no different.
Now, how many cars, if you know, you may not be the right witness, will be generated by these buildings?
I'm not.
Josh, we'll say that for our traffic engineer.
Sure.
All right, thank you, that's good. And what about recycling? Have you had any consideration of recycling?
Testified at the previous hearing how the recycling would be handled.
I wasn't here at the previous hearing.
But this witness didn't do it, so.
I do.
Okay, that's fine. I'll leave it for another day. I have no further questions right now for this witness.
Good.
Is there anyone in the public that has questions for this witness?
Yes, I have a number of questions. Walter Kraft.
Mr. Kraft sat closer, that's why you keep getting beat out.
Did I get up too fast?
No, it seemed pretty even to me. He was just further away.
I'm curious, you said that you were looking at compatible units in the neighborhood. What compatible units did you look at in the neighborhood?
I said I looked at compatible architecture and compatible housing. So when I talk about that, I talk about that I'm looking at the character and style of the houses, whether it's 2-family, 3-family, 1-family. It's more about how our project will fit into the neighborhood. So I was looking at the styles, whether they were hip roofs, whether they were gable roofs, whether they had round windows and square windows, what the character, was it Victorian, was it Cape Cod, was it English Tudor, whatever the style may be, to take a look at the particular styles and character so that we could work as best as we could so that it could fit into the neighborhood.
Did you identify any 6-unit condos in this investigation when you were trying to look at the character of the neighborhood?
I did not look at how many units were in the structures, nor did I go and knock on the doors to find out whether there was stacking, whether there was multiple units, whether they were multifamilies. I looked at them from the outside and from the character, and I do know that I designed 39 Morris Avenue, right down the block, which was built, it's a Habitat for Humanity project, and it's a 6-unit project.
Okay, I don't consider that part of the Ashwood neighborhood.
It's in the greater neighborhood.
That's my concern. Now, will all the units have attic access?
No.
Okay, the ones that do have it, are they going to be petitioned as separate units?
The attic is only accessible for maintenance purposes.
So nobody can store anything up there?
Nobody. The attic is not designed to store anything.
Okay, another question. How many different site layouts were considered?
Many.
10, 1, 5, I'm trying to get an idea. You say many.
I would say in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 different site layouts were considered.
Did any of these site layouts consider access to Morris Avenue totally?
As previously stated in testimony, we don't own, we will not own access to Morris Avenue.
So the answer is no.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a yes or no answer. Got that. If you went and arranged the modules to a different size, couldn't all access for construction vehicles come off Morris Avenue?
No.
If you didn't use modular construction, could all access then come off Morris Avenue for construction vehicles?
I would say possibly. I can't say for certain.
Okay, I'm just looking at ways of trying to minimize impact. That's why I asked the question. If construction goes through Ashwood Court, how will the residences be affected?
Specifically, can you define that question a little better?
Well, right now you say there's going to be trucks coming in, there's going to be cranes coming in. I'd like to know how are the residences going to be affected? Are they going to have free movement in and out the way they have it now? Are they going to be restricted from movements?
So it's going to, as Mr. Galvin said, we're going to create a plan that's a phasing staging plan that's going to outline with the police department, with the engineering department, if necessary, with the planning department, and whatever other regulatory agencies, so that it goes as smoothly as possibly, so as not to impede any flow from Ashwood Court of the residents to normal egress and ingress into their properties.
Okay, are you the right one to ask about if there is a fire in any unit as to how the fire would respond, the fire department
So-
would respond?
I can't answer how the fire department can respond, but I can answer that all the buildings are going to be sprinklered. I believe they're going to have a Siamese, they'll have a Siamese connection. And I also, if I remember correctly from the previous testimony, that the water is going to be increased, the flow to the property to provide additional supply quantity to the neighborhood as well as to the new project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one comment in regard to the fire question. I don't have the details in front of me, but we do have an updated report from the fire chief that says the application had been revised to conform to their prior comments, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, we do have a comment from the fire chief that the application was revised to comply with some earlier comments that the fire chief had, presumably about safety and access, so it does sound like changes were made in response to the fire chief.
Is that the current application or is that a previous application? Because I know there's been quite a few changes in terms of the applications, and I was just wondering the time frame on it.
Well, it looks like it was from the prior application. What I don't know off the top of my head is did anything change in revision that would affect the fire chief's?
The fire chief's looking at the building. When you take
Yeah.
the proposed building off the other building, it's not going to change his comments.
Okay.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear back.
The answer is, it does not change the fire inspector's comments. What happened, the only change that was affected was the plans were revised to remove all the building structures from the other lot. So if they said it complies before, it still complies now. No. No, okay. He fancies himself a cleanup hitter. Go ahead.
Hi. Just a couple of quick questions.
You got to state your name every time.
Okay. Joseph Ng, 137 Hillcrest. You mentioned earlier that you looked at about 5 to 10 different configurations.
That is correct.
When you were designing those, did you take into account the Parkline project?
We took into account that that we knew that the railroad bed was going to convert over to the Parkline project, okay? In terms of when the Parkline project becomes reality, we don't know when that will become reality. The idea of in laying out how the buildings can fit on the property and the parking and the drainage and everything else, and I just want to clearly state the 5 to 10 that I mentioned was a combination of designs and site layout, okay? That in terms of specifically addressing the people along the park line will see our buildings, and people in our buildings will see the park line. Other than that, in terms of view or corridors or any, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by design with them, but other than that, no.
So I actually meant site layout. So how many different site layouts did you?
It was in the 5 to 10 range.
In your drawings, you have certain air conditioning units that are very close to sort of the border between the Habitat for Humanity site and Ashwood Court. There are 3 air conditioners facing 7 Ashwood Court and 3 air conditioners facing 8 Ashwood Court. Is there anything in your design that would preclude moving those to different parts of the...
So the units, we didn't talk about it, but we do Energy Star. We do very sustainable units on all the Habitat projects. We've actually done net zero projects for Habitat, okay? These are super high efficiency units, and they're actually quieter than your typical AC unit that you would find outside. because we're using more high-efficiency units, there's a limitation to how far they can be from their partner unit inside in relationship to where the unit is above. They're situated, if you look on the site plan, there are 3, as you mentioned, facing 7, and 3 facing 8, and then I believe there are 3 facing, we'll say on another side, and 3 on another side. I think 3 facing the park line, okay, I think. And they have to be a certain distance from the units. So we took into consideration not putting all 6 units there, but we did the minimal, or that we had to, along those sides.
Can you tell me what the municipal distance required is? You mentioned there's a minimum distance.
No, I didn't mention.
Between the air conditioning
Oh.
inside and the...
I don't know it off the top of my head,
So you don't know if you could actually move it?
I do know because we discussed it, I discussed it with our construction management team. I don't know the number offhand, it's probably buried in my notes somewhere, but we looked actually at different places where, to try and minimize visibility. I believe we're screening them, but we could not move them to the front side or to the other side. It would be too great a distance.
So you couldn't put all 6 together?
No. Or yes, we could not.
Are there any other measures you can take to reduce the noise to neighbors at 7 and 8 Asheville?
What I can say about the units, obviously, there are certain ordinances in the town in terms of audible listening, and we're going to be under those that are required by the ordinance to mitigate any sound.
And how does that work? When you're going to install the units first and then do the measurement, and then figure out if we put any sort of additional mitigation?
I'm not the civil engineer, but I think there is screening on the plans.
You're not allowed to exceed, after 10 o'clock at night, you're not allowed to exceed 50 dBA at the property line, at the property boundary line. And you're going to use current standard air conditioning units. They're going to be properly baffled, correct?
Right, and these are actually more high energy, like I said, efficient, that have less, and they are going to be baffled.
So, other than the fact that there's a couple of them, that might increase the sound. It shouldn't be any different than having an air conditioner next door on a single-family home.
The units on 7 Ashwood Court and 8 Ashwood Court, which are on that side, will make more noise than the units on our building, because they're closer in terms of sound.
Okay. He gave his reason, that they were closer.
Questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Frank Devashevsky again. Very cool, you said that you looked at between 5 and 10 different scenarios, different layouts for the particular site before you came up with this configuration.
Yes.
Was a comparative matrix prepared that said the pluses and the minuses of each one and why they were rejected?
No, there wasn't a comparative matrix.
You know, if you said between 5 and 10, I mean, there must be pros and cons for each one, so that in the end, looking at whatever notes you work, this was the best one that you thought you made.
A lot of the, and I cannot speak for the engineer, but I'll speak for as a team member. A lot of it has to do with a progression. So you work on a scheme, and does this work, and different things, and then we move on to another scheme and develop it further and further.
Got that, but how was that documented? Did you document it? Told me.
Just say no.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that there's going to be a sprinkler system installed for the units.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of pressure head are we looking at as far as getting that water in it so that you're going to meet those levels?
I don't know.
Has the utility company signed off and said that they can in fact provide the pressure head needed to drive the sprinklers?
That happens in every...
So one thing, oh, go ahead.
That is an intelligent and important question, but it's not within the jurisdiction of the zoning board. We have to consider this approval, that's an outside agency approval to get it from the utility authority.
Sir, if I do remember reading the ordinance, that there is in fact a requirement where the applicant has to get letters of consent from utility companies that says that they
Yes.
can provide power.
But
Yes.
they either have those or they will have those. Or they won't be able to build the project.
So,
It's an either or, actually, so, I mean, again, I said it was a great question, it's just not
well,
what we need to discuss here.
okay. Will the utilities as a whole, will they be below ground or above ground? Utility, electric, cable?
Electric, I believe, is all coming in underground. It's in a particular corner of each of the basements. We have a mechanical room set aside for each of the utilities to come in.
When you were looking at your layout as far as the buildings go, did your work extend to the sidewalk slopes, the driveways, and the parking areas, the common areas? Or is it just the buildings?
So, to answer that question, I'm the architect and I worked on the buildings, but in coordinating what heights we need to get access to the buildings, I worked with the engineer so that the slopes could work so that we could get into the buildings.
Okay. How about the parking areas, the sidewalks leading up to the buildings, or is that your purview?
No, it is not.
Okay, that was a site engineer?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, you said that a lot of the construction vehicles have potential to come in from Ashwood Court. And that's because of the difficulty in bringing them in off Morris Avenue. Did I get that correctly?
I said that some of the construction vehicles will come in off of Ashwood Court.
Okay. As far as the utilities that are there, how will we as the residents be impacted? Because you have some definitely the kind of equipment that you're talking about bringing in. Power lines are going to have to be raised, cable lines will probably have to be moved as well. What provisions will there be to make sure that we're not disrupted?
That will be done with a plan with the township engineer, the township planner, and the other regulating authorities.
Based on your plan?
Based on working with the municipality
Yeah, they're
so
gonna
that it has the
tell us-
least amount of impact.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's the way it's done. We gotta figure it out. We'll make sure we have a safe plan and that that they work with you, and it'll be okay.
Now, just for lighting once again, if we don't mind, start the parking lot lighting, that was not you.
That is not me.
All right, I'll take that someplace
Although our engineers already said it's adequate.
else. Do we have something a little bit more that?
He did a mathematical calculation and he looked at the isometric plan and found that it was,
Are they available?
yeah.
Because what I'm also seeing, if I remember correctly, the lighting fixture that's being shown there, showing a clear distance of 16 feet from top of the pavement to bottom of the fixture, but the ordinance that's in place for the city right now says the maximum is 50. Is there a variance that's being applied for it? And
That I'm not aware of. I don't think I know the architect isn't because I'm looking at him, okay? And I don't know if Mr. Dower considered that, so again, I don't think we're gonna finish tonight, so it's something that we will think about between now and the next hearing. Because I think you're right, I'm very concerned with light shooting off, so.
because we have, in addition, just looking at it from the way, I'm sure you might have seen this as well. If we're looking at a height of 16 feet, you have to add on the fact that there's an elevation difference from Ashwood Court to the lot of approximately 4.5 feet. So now we've got 4.5 feet plus now 60. Now we're something at 20 feet or so, which is probably going to shine over the top of some of the buildings on Ashwood Court.
I don't know.
So if we're doing though, but if that hasn't been taken into account, then how can we make sure that the CalPro calcs were done correctly and that they took this into consideration?
I understand.
The engineer said that it's adequate. I was wondering, yes, that was taken into account? Yes or no question?
Well, we're gonna look at it after, we'll go back and take another look at it. There's a lot of calculations that are made. Right.
Thank you.
I just have one question. My name is Dr. Julie O'Connell. I live at One Asheville Court. This is hopefully a very simple question. How many parking spaces are in your design plan, your architectural design?
So I'll leave that to the traffic engineer.
So you can't answer it just based on that design plan?
It's on the engineering
We're gonna have
drawing.
more testimony from the traffic engineer.
Yes, he'll be able to address that.
Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Matthew Weiser, W-E-I-S-S-E-R. I'm a resident of 5 Ashwood Court. You say that you've worked with Habitat for Humanity in the past to construct similar style housing?
For what type of housing? I'm sorry.
The prefabricated housing?
We're doing one that's partially prefabricated, but I've not done with Habitat. I've personally done, in my firm, I've done prefabricated housing before on several projects, but we have not done it yet for Habitat.
Okay. Is this project going to be typical of other Habitat projects where it is mostly volunteer-based construction?
So the idea behind this is in order to minimize the impact in the neighborhood, to do it the modular construction, okay? There will still be a component of it, as there is with every Habitat project. Every Habitat project has a sweat equity for residents to put in, I think it's 200 to 300 hours of time on different, maybe not on their house, but on somebody else's residence. And so there will definitely be volunteers working on this, but the modular component will take care of a major part of the construction, and the site work is minimized because that's done more with a site contractor, okay? So there will be work in the units, finishing them off, as well as some of the outside work. But there will be a volunteer workforce working on this project.
Okay, I guess you
So it is typical.
You said yourself that this was a complicated design. That was what you said earlier today. And I guess my concern is volunteers, perhaps less experienced than the professionals working on a style of housing that you have never worked with for Habitat for Humanity.
Is this a comment or a question? He's going to ask a
It's
question.
my question. I apologize if I'm being long-winded first time up here. I guess my question is more towards what safety concerns towards the volunteers have you guys looked into as the
So let me address that. There's a couple of things. One, as I mentioned, the roofs are actually going to come already, I believe, with the shingles on them, in talking with the manufacturing company for the modular. So the roofs, which is, if you look back at other Habitat projects, we've had volunteers on the roof. They're highly trained. This is not one project that Habitat works on. Habitat has multiple projects going on that are multifamily, this particular Habitat, and is well-skilled. They have several construction teams. They have construction heads. They have all different heads that are trained. In addition to that, on previous projects, and this one, I did say it was complicated in terms of how it came together and everything, but the actual units are actually quite simple. But one thing that I've done, my office has done in the past, is actually sit down with the volunteers ahead of them and talk to them as to how to read the blueprints and everything. This is not a one-off for them. There are, with every volunteer, there's a whole workforce.
That answer's good. They also answered all this at the last hearing. I didn't know that you weren't here. Well, we don't go back over. We never finish any application.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Please come forward.
I mean, if somebody raises.
So it's fair to say the heavy lifting is not going to be done by volunteers. Qualified construction foremen are going to be on site doing.
Absolutely. These will be crane operators hired.
Attaching.
Absolutely.
Truss construction to the sill, et
Yes.
cetera.
So the modular company comes out and sets. They have a setting crew that comes out and set this. This is not the volunteers that are setting these modules. What the volunteers will be working on is more like some finishes inside and outside.
Nothing structural that could affect the soundness, structural integrity of a building.
If they are, they're well trained in it.
Well, on a serious note, that type of activity will be to the licensed professionals, not coming in screwing up, something into a light fixture or what have you.
As mentioned earlier, the construction team for Habitat is run by people who are former construction contractors. These are not lay people who are the managers of the sites.
I'm just following up on the concerned citizen's question, that he made a legitimate point.
So-
We're not going to have John Doe down the street to fill his 200 hours in directing the
No.
crane in and attaching truss construction.
Let me interject real quick, just to remind the board that this testimony was heard to quite a far extent as to who was gonna do what types of activities in the last hearing, so we can look at the transcript to reassure ourselves of that.
Perhaps we could suggest to the neighborhood that these, tonight we're on television. The first hearing was on television, and we would encourage folks to go, I would personally encourage folks to go to Hometown Television and watch the actual stuff so you can see what was brought up at the prior hearing, and encourage your neighbors to watch tonight so that when they come next time, because I have a feeling we're going to have a next time, we won't be going over additional information. So, repeat information, which we have just done for the last 15 minutes.
So I'd like to take one more question, and we're gonna take a break. Please state your name.
Rick Bell, I live in Summit at 22 Laurel Avenue, Memorial Field. It's not on, but I have a specific question, but as an architect, I'd like to preface it by saying that I'm convinced that looking at the renderings here tonight, that the building is broken down. It's plain English that the building looks smaller by being in L shape rather than...
Question.
The question has to do with the method of construction, two-part question. My experience with modular is that it's much faster and safer and better quality. Can you describe more than you have already how much faster modular is likely to be and how less disruptive it will be?
No. It's an unnecessary.
Second question, you've talked about sustainability in
Yes.
regard to
Yes.
the building materials.
Yes.
Including the trusses that will be part of the modular or not. Will the trusses be capable of eventually taking solar panels, for example? Is that part
So,
of what the future context will be, not just the present context?
So we have designed other habitat projects to handle solar panels. I'm not sure at this point if we're going to design the trusses to take the solar panels or not. I can't answer that at this time.
In terms of structural strength,
Probably be adequate.
roof orientation?
Yes. It depends. It depends on. There's a lot of factors in terms of orientation and how many pieces we can get, and if it works with the slope. If it's too shallow a slope, which solar prefers, then the buildings don't look proportional and look more squat. So we wanted it to look more fitting in with the neighborhood, which has more steeper roofs. So I can't say at this time. It may be or may not.
That will be considered. Thank you.
But it'll be considered.
Take a 5-minute break.
Well,
Thank
can I just, that's it for this witness? Was there anybody else that wanted to ask a question of this witness? Because we're going to let him go.
Right here.
Well, we should hang.
Yeah,
on.
you want to go? Okay,
Yes,
we'll
we're
do
going
one-
to finish
we'll do
this
another
witness
question.
and let him go.
Come on up.
Hi, again, Tara Gagliano.
Yeah, you always
One
have to.
question.
When you come up, you're always talking to the court reporter. You got to give her your name again, okay?
Tara Gagliano.
Okay. Good.
So you said that you visited the site and that you know about the neighborhood and you designed this to fit in with the neighborhood. So piggybacking off of Ms. Newell's concerns, my question to you is, just generally, and forgive me, it's simple. In the court, what shape are the houses?
In the court, meaning Ashwood Court?
Ashwood Court, which is the direct neighborhood that this is going to impact, what shape are the houses?
So the shape of the houses are more square, and they have little add-on components.
There's one add-on to one house that was altered. However, this is an L-shaped, and are you creating L-shaped to fit as many units in that piece of property as possible?
No. The L shape,
You just said, I'm sorry.
Don't interrupt. He's answering your question. You got to be fair. Go back and forth, all right?
okay.
Tennis.
Okay. So I didn't design the L shape to create as many units as possible. We wanted to accomplish to have 6 units in each of the buildings, okay? That's what we wanted to have on the property, okay? And they could have been a bar-shaped building. They could have been a box-shaped building. They could have been an L shape. They could have been one long rectangular building. It could have been an S-shaped building. There's all different shapes that the building could be. The L shape, as I previously testified, was to minimize the impact. If it were a square, which is easier to construct, cheaper to build, but I don't think it would have been appropriate for the neighborhood. It would have looked like even if it was instead of a 6-unit, a 4-unit, it would look disproportionate to the other houses in the neighborhood. By giving a more three-dimensional look to the housing, it allows for it to have an ever-changing view of it so that it diminishes the size and scale.
So we're here because you're putting in more units than it's allowable on that site, correct? For density purposes, is that correct?
Yes.
It's not the architect's portfolio.
Right.
There'll be a
It's the planner.
We'll answer that.
Okay, the planner is going to be coming up?
At some point,
Okay,
yeah.
that's it.
I do have a question, though. When you look at the neighborhood, I know that at least one of the board members is very concerned about the materials and look. And you've given us your testimony. Is there a general color palette for Ashwood Court? Is there a general material? Like you said, we don't use the
Cementitious material.
cementitious, I can never get that right. But if their houses are all cementitious, maybe we should have cementitious here, you know what I'm saying? If their houses were all some sort of brick, maybe we should have brick here. Although you're not meeting the same form of the house, you're trying to keep the material lines the same.
So the color palette, as proposed, was what we were planning on doing. In this earth tones, yellow, beiges, creams. We found, specifically I found, that this would work well on this particular property and in the neighborhood. Are we open to other color palettes? I think we said yes.
Okay.
In terms of materials, so the
Is there
picking
some way-
materials
let me ask you a different
goes through a
way.
rigorous process here at Habitat.
Let me just, and I'll let it go after this. Is there anybody else that has a question of this witness? We had one more. We're all done? We're done with this witness? Going once, going twice, going 3 times? Okay. I'm just wondering if there's some way to jazz it a little bit. Is there can we add an element somehow or change, but we're not going to answer that right now. We're going to
Okay.
think. We're going to think. That's smart.
We will think about it.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute
Thank you.
recess. Thank
I have a pizza waiting for you when you get home.
And here we go.
Okay, we're back on the record.
Good evening. If I may call my next witness, Eric Keller, a traffic engineer.
I'm sorry, wait 1 second. Where's our architect? Come back up for 1 second. Just be 1 second. We had a conversation during the break where I suggested that maybe we should consider putting a darker tone, like the olives that we see out there now occasionally, or something, or dark gray or slate. It's kind of a good look. And you said,
Okay, so the reason why we chose this more earth tone palette is because there's certain colors that go in and out of style. Right now, a common color that you see in construction is a dark gray and also a dark blue. You're also seeing a lot of black colored windows, sometimes even maroon colored windows, or what we call forest green or an olive color. Those are all what we call trendy colors. They come in and out. If you're in architecture long enough, it's a cycle. It's back in again, just like gray colors for kitchen cabinets and different things. So those colors are a little bit more trendy. What we try to do always, at least I try to do in my architecture, especially for Habitat, who's investing a lot of time and effort in projects that it's a 30-year mortgage and different things, is that the colors and the materials last, and that they're more, I don't want to say universal, but more timeless. And earth tones always tend to be timeless. That's not to say we can't do light blues and other colors, but the darker colors today are a little bit more trendy, and I think when you look back at it in 5 years, and you look at it, you're gonna know, or even 10 or 15 years, you're gonna know that was built of a certain age. Not to say that's bad.
it's good, thank you. I thought that the board needed that information in case you decided to change the color palette. All right, thank you.
If I may call my next witness, Eric Keller, traffic engineer.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Eric L. Keller, Keller.
All right. And give us your licensure.
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I've been licensed in New Jersey since 1987.
And
my license is still current and in good standing.
is it 1 or 2 or the number? 1 or 2? You've been doing it for a long time, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Now, just provide 3 boards nearby that you've appeared recently, or anywhere in New Jersey in the last little bit. And don't include Summit.
Berkeley Heights, Boonton Town, Maplewood.
That's it, that's true. Do you want to ask what questions about his credentials? You guys know each other because you work in the
Yes, we
same
do.
area. All right, good.
Mr. Delaney's in Boonton on another one of my applications.
All right.
But I'll confess, even though you got beaten up there, I didn't ask one single question.
Correct.
Okay.
Let's keep it going, Judge.
Mr. Chairman, will you accept his credentials?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Great.
Carry on, Counselor.
Thank you. Eric, have you had an opportunity to visit the site?
I have.
Did you conduct a traffic study in connection with this application?
We have.
And what did you conclude?
I've had this exhibit marked as A5. This is a colorized version of the site plan inserted into an aerial photograph. The aerial is a 2014-2015, which was obtained from the New Jersey Geographic Information Network. Just to orient everybody, Ashwood Avenue on the right side of the sheet, north is to the top. Morris Avenue runs in a generally east-west direction. Ashwood Court is located midpoint of the aerial with our proposed project, Building A to the north, Building B to the south, with the parking area in between. As you've heard, it's 12 townhouse units that are being proposed. The access arrangement, the overlay zone that was adopted by the city for this project specifically states that the access for this project is to come from Ashwood Court. It's in the zoning regulations.
Is it section D2?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Actually, E2, Mr. Gelman.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Wong.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ashwood Court is an existing cul-de-sac. The Ashwood Court right-of-way extends to the property, and there's an easement for the bulb of the cul-de-sac. Our proposal is not to remove the cul-de-sac, but to provide a 20-foot wide driveway off the end of the cul-de-sac, serving the proposed parking lot. There are 4 duplex units on Ashwood Court, and there are 2 houses at the corner of Ashwood Court and Ashwood Avenue, so their driveways extend out to Ashwood Avenue. The stem of Ashwood Court is a standard 30-foot width of roadway leading to the bulb of the cul-de-sac. In reviewing the city ordinances in Chapter 7, there are no established parking restrictions for Ashwood Court. Therefore, the standard Title 39, which is state law, which governs traffic regulations of various components, apply to parking on the street, which means no parking within 25 feet of a crosswalk, etc. On Ashwood Avenue, parking is permitted, but only along the westerly side of Ashwood Avenue. Now, as traffic engineers, we calculate what the trip generation is on a peak hour basis. And we only look at 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon for residential use to look at what is the incremental impact of a project on the peak hour traffic. The peak hour traffic is that highest 60-minute period between 7 and 9, generally 7 and 9 to 4 to 6 p.m. When the
underlying traffic is at its highest. Now, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is our industry's group, or that traffic engineers belong to, it's an industry organization. They publish on a periodic basis the trip generation manual. Just a year or so ago, they published the 10th edition, which is the latest, which contains the trip generation characteristics of a variety of different uses. In this particular case, we're looking at what they categorize this project would be a low-rise multifamily housing. Based on that publication, which is accepted throughout the United States, acquired by DOT and other jurisdictions, for 12 units, the IT indicates that this project will generate 6 trips during the morning peak hour, again, that 60-minute period. That's 1 trip in and 5 trips out. And during the PM peak hour, 7 trips, 4 in and 3 out. Those are very low volumes for a project, which is commensurate with the fact that it is only 12 units. Now, we are before this board because we need a density variance. So to establish this for the planner who will follow me, we looked at what the trip generation would be for 9 units, which would be a conforming project from a density perspective. And that would be 4 AM trips versus 6 with this. So this project would have 2 more AM trips, and there would be 5 PM trips, as opposed to the 7 trips for this. So again, we're looking at 2 vehicle trips difference between a 9-unit project and a 12-unit project. Now, we did perform a traffic count at the intersection of Ashwood Court and Ashwood Avenue. There are 8 units, 4 duplexes, 8 units on Ashwood Court. And what we found during the morning peak hour was that there were 9 AM trips, which was 3 in and 6 out, and there were 9 PM trips, 5 in and 4 out. So our volumes from this proposed project are less than what's generated today, and in combination, still results in a very low volume of traffic coming out of Ashwood Court onto Ashwood Avenue. Now, our observations during the morning peak hour was that about 80%, 5 of the 6 trips made a right turn out. And one of the reasons for that is that Ashwood Avenue in the morning backs up from Morris Avenue. The queues for most of the morning peak hour extend well past Ashwood Court. It's an existing condition. It's there today. It's going to be there tomorrow. Has no impact on, or this project has no impact on that. Now, we looked at, and it's really a function of the traffic signals at Morris Avenue and at Broad Street. And it's creating backups on the street today. Now, in the PM peak hour, we did not observe that because the traffic flows on Ashwood Avenue. In the morning, they're predominantly northbound, and in the evening, they're southbound. So there's less traffic going northbound, and there's less vehicles headed north, so there's no queues during the PM peak hour. That extended past Ashwood Court based on our observations. If we look at, to try and put this into perspective, is that we analyzed the intersection of Ashwood Court and Ashwood Avenue, assuming that there is no queue of vehicles on Ashwood Avenue, just for the purpose of establishing what is the incremental change in the levels of service. How does this intersection operate if there was no backup? And I know that there is, but we're trying to look at this on an incremental basis. And what we found is that the level of service, which is the grading system that we use as traffic engineers, with level of service A having the littlest amount of delay and level of service F having the most delay, the intersection would operate at level of service A during the AM and level of service B during the PM. So putting aside the outside influences of the backups on Ashwood Avenue is that the intersection works at a very good level of service. Now, we also contacted the Summit Police Department. We filed an OPA request looking for any accident data at the intersection or the immediate approaches to Ashwood Court, and the OPA request came back and said that there were no accident records in the past 3 years for that location. Now, and obviously they are only going to be able to provide those that are reported accidents. Now, the parking, the residential site improvement standards govern all development parameters associated with residential development. The RSI is for the mix of bedrooms that we have, states that we need to provide 25 spaces, and we are providing 27 spaces. So the parking for this project complies with the applicable standards. The driveway width is 20 feet, which again also complies with RSIS standards for the type of development, the intensity of development that's proposed. There was discussion at the last meeting about could we go to 18 feet? 18 feet would require de minimis exception from the RSIS standards as it would not comply.
Can you also please discuss the emergency access as far as it relates to fire lanes and also for deliveries?
Well, we're providing, the parking is located proximate to the buildings. The fire department has reviewed this. There is no parking on the stem or the driveway from Ashwood Court to the parking area. Deliveries would occur within the parking spaces. The deliveries typically are going to be mail trucks and other small vehicles. The occasional larger vehicle would use the turnaround at the end and the parking spaces to maneuver within the site.
Okay, and then can you one more time please just discuss the proposed project and how it will significantly or not significantly impact Ashwood Court?
My conclusion is that there is a imperceptible change in the level of traffic on the roadway. The operations of Ashwood Court at Ashwood Avenue will continue to operate at a appropriate and acceptable level of service, and there is no undue burden upon Ashwood Court as a result of the traffic from this project.
And then when you conducted your study, did you use the 10th edition manual?
We did.
Okay, no further questions.
We did.
The question was whether or not he used the trip generation 10th edition manual when he conducted his study.
Yeah. Is there any questions from the board?
Sure. Just to dig into your methodology a little bit, what were the peak hours that you were using for the purpose of the trip count analysis?
Well, we did traffic counts between 7 and 9 and 4 to 6. I don't recall off the top of my head the specific 60-minute period that the counts showed as the peak hour, but they were within that 2-hour window, which is the standard time frame that we look at.
So knowing that the peak hour methodology kind of looks at the worst case scenario in a certain sense,
yes.
Is there any other generally accepted approach to understanding traffic flow, looking at the 3-hour time frame or some broader window of time?
No. The only other thing that we look at on a project of a greater magnitude is we'll look at the daily traffic volumes to establish number of lanes that are needed for internal roadways. That's not applicable to a project of this small size.
Last question, with regard to level of service, I believe it was on Ashwood Road. Can you tell me what the level of service is with the existing condition?
Well, with the existing backup during, and this is only during the morning peak hour, you really can't measure it because the operations of Ashwood Court are affected by factors beyond the, the traffic on Ashwood Court. There's a backup that has existed probably for a number of years, and it's not related to specifically to the court.
So then maybe just to draw us back to your testimony, and correct me if I'm wrong, for the AM hour, there would be essentially no perceptible impact. It was an A level of service, I believe you testified?
That was based on assuming that there is no queue.
Right.
Because you can't really measure the level of service. Somebody who comes out of Ashwood Court and wants to make a left is really dependent on the northbound traffic, what we call is a courtesy gap to allow somebody to enter the stream of traffic.
But the queue is a normal condition, is a regular condition based on your observation?
From our observations,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, so this wouldn't exacerbate it in any substantial way?
No.
And then there may be some greater impact in the evening. I believe you said the standard of service was B as opposed to A. It's a more substantial impact? Marginal, but more substantial.
A level of service B on a roadway such as Ashwood Avenue is a great level of service.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't write down the exact numbers, but correct me if I'm wrong. It sounded like the change in trips on Ashwood Court from what it is now to what it will be if this project is built. Was it about doubled during those key hours?
Today, Ashwood has 9 trips in the morning and in the afternoon, and we're calculating for this project 6 in the morning and 7.
So a total of, goes from 9 to 15 in the morning?
Correct.
And then what in the afternoon?
From 9 to 16.
And it's not quite doubling, but it's, 50 to 75% increase. That's imperceptible by your standards? Or what would be perceptible?
From an operational standpoint, it's imperceptible. It doesn't change the level of service. Obviously, these are averages. It's what we observed with the count that we took. It doesn't materially change the function or operation of the roadway. In that sense, it's imperceptible. Yes, it's a doubling of what's already there, but you're doubling, a small number to something that's a little bit bigger.
What kind of increase would that be for it to be perceptible or to change the nature of the intersection?
It depends on the project. I can't put, is it 50 units? It depends on the specific character. We're looking at it from an operational standpoint. Ashwood Court, let me put it in this terms. Under the RSIS, cul-de-sacs are allowed to have up to 250 trips per day.
Don't, keep going.
Okay. 12.
Are you waiting for the spitballs? Friends, Roman, countrymen.
No, I don't duck anymore.
Okay.
I got my Kevlar vest on. These 12 units are going to generate somewhere on the order of 70 trips per day. The existing homes are 80. Again, it's kind of a doubling, but it's well less than what the RSI says is permissible for single family. If this was all multifamily, you're allowed to have up to 1,000 trips per day on a multifamily access cul-de-sac without a second means of access. We're well below that. So I think, to me, a perceptible change in function would be exceeding those numbers.
1,000 trips a day with a 12-unit density?
No. I'm just saying, in a larger multifamily complex, it comes out to around, with the new numbers, probably 190, almost 200 units, gets you to about 1,000 trips per day. So that's 15 to 17 times bigger than what we're proposing here.
I think what you're trying to say is theoretically a cul-de-sac could handle that much traffic, but obviously this cul-de-sac will get nowhere near that level of traffic.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because it's much smaller than your hypothetical.
Yes.
Were you part of this has been described as a team effort by the folks at Habitat. Were you part of the team when it was looked at to see whether or not the additional piece of property that we're now being asked to just make an empty lot was initially going to be a club, and there was talk about having access to the housing through that to make an extra driveway? Were you part of that?
I was not, but I will say, I've seen the old plans. There was never access for this project out to Morris Avenue.
That's correct. That was never contemplated by the professionals.
Okay, I'd have to go back and look at the
Zoning code
transcript.
requires the access, it specifically states must come from Ashwood Court. It's in the zoning ordinance.
Can you give the citation for the public for that?
Mr. Mullin, you can help me out.
I could. It's
Thank you.
Go slow.
35-43- or, sorry, wrong reference. See, I screwed up. Ordinance number 2017-3122, section 2.
Can you start again? I'm sorry, I'm writing it down. What was it?
2017-3122.
2017
-3122,
-3122,
section 2,
section 2.
subsection E,
Yeah.
sub 2.
I was just trying to find out whether or not that ever could become, and what the effect would be on with Morris Avenue, because I'm absolutely sure nobody was turning left out of there.
It was not contemplated.
Okay. You weren't involved and it wasn't contemplated,
Yes, sir.
Just conjecture. All the right turns that come out of Ashwood Court in the morning, are they trying to find an alternate means of egress out to Morris Avenue? Do you have any knowledge of
I
where
don't-
the traffic's going?
I don't know. We just measured the turning movements at that intersection. We did not see where they went to.
Do you think those extra trips, I don't know if you know the geography or the, sort of the different routes to Morris Avenue from the neighborhood, do you think those extra trips will cause any burden on the neighborhood?
I mean, even, let's take it, there's 5 outbound trips. Nope, yeah, 5 outbound trips during the morning peak hour. If they all made a right turn, and then went down and turned onto another street, 5 trips is not going to materially change the function of any of the streets in the area. And I don't think they're all gonna go in the same direction.
And what were wait times to make a right turn out of Ashwood Court onto Ashwood Avenue in the morning?
Because it's a single lane and, all the movements out of Ashwood Court, and again, this is assuming no constraints due to the queue, the average delay is calculated using the highway capacity software, which is what we use, was 9.7 seconds.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, you had mentioned the difficulty making a left-hand turn in your study.
Yes.
Out of Ashwood Court onto Ashwood Avenue.
Correct.
I don't know if it's in your jurisdiction, but the additional increase, that's probably going to exasperate the situation. Would there be a consideration if there would be a disallowance of a left-hand turn between the hours of? Is that something that would be thought of? Does it make sense?
In general, my approach, and actually, let me take a step back. That decision is made by the city council. They would have to adopt an ordinance because it's under city control. My opinion as a traffic engineer is if there is adequate sight distance and there is no impediment other than queuing of traffic, that turning movement should not be unduly restricted just because it is a little bit of a challenge to make that turn.
Have you ever made those recommendations to city council, that they've adhered to your advice? And do you-
Not to a municipal council. I do represent a municipality as a municipal engineer, but I have not made that, we haven't had that need arise. I have done it as a board engineer where I've made a recommendation that more on a driveway, that turn restrictions should be considered, but typically it's because of a sight distance constraint or other factors, not just because traffic during a peak hour is challenging. I think it's best left to the individual driver to make the decision that best suits them.
And just for the record, I don't know if the police department would ever do this, but they had no comments about this application. I don't know what happened in the TRC process, but at least the material we got, they had no comments about traffic or turns or anything like that.
Just to, maybe to build on that for just a moment, when you're looking, we've been talking a lot about capacity and traffic flow and what have you. When you consider the operational impact on Ashwood Court and the adjacent neighborhood, you consider also the public safety impact?
Well, that's why we pulled the accident records and there were none, so.
Would you anticipate the additional trips to necessitate additional oversight by the police, traffic calming measures?
No, I don't.
Two quick ones.
Yes, sir.
In terms of car ownership for this 100% affordable habitat project, would it be the same as a market rate project in terms of the number of cars on site?
I
Or does
can't.
Habitat maybe have an understanding of the rate of car ownership as compared to a market rate project?
Yeah, I mean, we use standard trip rates. I don't know, I've never studied that as to whether there's a difference in car ownership.
I ask because sometimes in 100% affordable projects, it's anticipated that there may be fewer cars on site.
I don't have an answer to that. Our study is based on, typical trip generation of low-rise multifamily housing.
The answer would be no.
I don't know. I can't answer the question.
Can you touch on how the anticipated traffic demand from this project relates to the current use of the site? In terms of the Italian-American Club, what that traffic generates, or various uses of the site?
We did not. I mean, I believe Mr. Delaney raised the point that the parking lot is used at points by the hospital, but their access is out to Morris Avenue. They don't have access to Ashwood Court. So we didn't study it because, we're comparing apples to oranges in a sense. So I don't know what their usage is on a peak hour or weekend basis or whatever.
Any other questions from the board? Our professionals?
It's 10:30, what do you want to do?
How many questions do you have?
I have about 10.
Me
Where's Mr. Monahan?
I'm here.
What are you thinking?
We'd love to finish Mr. Keller if we could. We don't want to impose on the board. We know we'll be back next time. Are you available on the first Monday of March?
I think I reserved it.
What do you think?
I think we're gonna,
Mr. Nicola?
Yeah, we're
What does
gonna
the
adjourn.
first Monday in March look like?
March 4th, there would be one other application.
Air conditioning plan?
That
worked out for us tonight.
Do best.
Let's see, picking up on Mr. Monahan's question, how much time will we have for the next time? Just, I didn't hear what you
I believe it's just another air conditioner.
Oh,
case.
good. So
It is an air conditioner.
Same.
That's fine.
We need
you some cool air to get rid of the hot air.
Can I make a request on behalf of the board? Is it possible to get a rendering of the entrance coming from Ashwood Court into the development? Would like to see the signage. I'd like to see what that approach is going to look like. I'd like to see it in context of the neighborhood. Is that something that you can provide to the board?
Mr. Weave says he'll try.
Guess that's the best we can do. Thank you.
And you gotta keep in mind, when you're gonna draw it from the center of the cul-de-sac, like going in. I'm gonna draw it.
Yeah, come on up.
No, it's okay. It's not gonna help, Sean, it's not gonna help, we just gotta use words right now.
I'm gonna draw it so that you can adequately see the elements that you're looking for. So you're looking for the sign, you're looking for, the housing,
Yeah.
on the property. So I'm gonna try to the best.
Yeah, you want to keep in mind the
How we can
elevations.
capture all of those elements. It may be further back, it may be up close, whatever I think really will help you understand what's going on.
All right. Does that work?
Yeah, taking into account the topography as well, that would, I think, be really helpful.
I'll try.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, what's the date and time again?
I think March 4th.
Monday,
So-
March 4th?
Do you waive the time which the board has to act?
Yes, we do.
Do we have a motion to carry this to March 4th without further notice?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I think that's Chris. Call for roll call.
No motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm sorry. Wait,
Thank you.
Wake up.
I gotta steal his job.
No, but you have to. I'll stay with this. Yes. You're the quarterback. You let him know you come out for practice.
I think I have, yeah.
I'm not paying attention.
Maybe quietly.
I'm not paying close enough.
We have two resolutions.